So in this video, I'm gonna be showing you how I get this shot that you're looking at right now, how I light it, and how I grade it. And I'm also gonna be talking about how I don't think that you really need to be shooting in log or even a flat picture profile when you're making YouTube videos like this. So stay tuned. So real quick, this video is actually brought to you by my Patreon supporters. And if you like what I do and you'd like to support me a little bit more, I would definitely say go check out my Patreon. For just $2 a month, you get all of my LUTs for free. And the next tier up, I actually make a bunch of content that's specifically geared for only the third tier of my Patreon supporters. I do more in-depth look on how I light my videos. I test different lenses. So if you're wondering about the sharpness of a certain lens, I do that. And there's just a bunch more content and value that I have in that third tier. So if you're interested in that, obviously on the third tier, you get all my LUTs on my Sellfy account as well. But if you just want to support me a little bit, definitely go check out my Patreon. And thanks again to everyone who is currently supporting me. I really, really appreciate it. So now let's get into breaking down this shot. I've been asked a bunch on my channel how I set up this shot and how I grade it and stuff like that. So first, I feel like I should kind of just break down the lighting a little bit. I've done a video on this before, but my lighting was a little bit different back then. So I'm not gonna go into like every little piece of gear, but basically you need a key light, you need a fill. I have a little accent light behind me that's kind of lighting up my wall, and then I have a hair light. So I'm gonna turn all of these off and then turn them on one by one so you can kind of see what they each do. First, let's turn off the fill. And now we'll turn off my hair light. And now let's turn off the little practical light behind me. And now we're basically just left with my key light. And I don't think I really need to turn that off because it'll just be darkness. But this is what it would look like if it was just my key light. And I don't know if some of you think that like you just need to have a key light. There's a lot more that goes into creating a nice looking shot than just a key light. So it's all those other little lights that kind of help separate you from the background and give a little bit more depth to your shot. So the first thing you definitely need to get down is your lighting. So yeah, here we are again, back to what the shot is supposed to look like. I got the hair light, got the little bit of fill coming from the opposite end of the key, and then I got my little practical behind me. So now let's go into white balance, and as most of you know, I shoot with the Panasonic GH3, but this will pretty much be the same with whatever camera you're using. Basically, I would definitely recommend setting your white balance manually. And the way I do that is I just hold up this white piece of paper, and on the GH3, when you want to set manual white balance, you just hold a piece of white paper or just anything that's like pure white, and then you can just white balance it off of that. Most cameras are pretty similar, so that's what I do. It's just super easy and simple. Yeah, as far as my picture profile goes, even though I can put the image to be flatter than it normally is, I don't, because there's really no point. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I shoot in the natural profile and I have the noise reduction turned all the way down, the sharpness turned down 1, and that's it. And that's the base of how I set my picture profile, because I want to get it as close to what it's actually going to look like as I possibly can. That's basically how I get this talking headshot. Now, as far as the grade goes, I'm just going to show you, this is what it looks like before I grade it, and then after I grade it. There's just some slight tweaks that I make to it that just give it a little bit more of the look that I'm going for. So let's hop into Premiere and I'll just show you how to do it real quick. It's pretty simple. So here we are at my laptop and we're gonna jump into Premiere Pro, but you could probably do these same kind of techniques on any editor that you have. So yeah, I'm gonna jump into Lumetri Color and I'm gonna show you what I do to my image. I have it in a preset, so it's actually really easy for me to do. I can just drag and drop the preset, but I'm gonna take the preset, show you what it looks like before and after, and then I'm gonna regrade it and see if I can get it as close to the preset as I possibly can. So let's get into it. This is what the footage looks like straight out of camera. If we add the preset on, you can see that the saturation's dropped a little bit, but my skin tone is still basically intact, and there's just a little less saturation overall. Now, what did I do? Well, if we go into Lumetri, we can see all the way down here that I took the saturation and the shadows down. And that's just something that I like to do because I feel like it looks a little bit more cinematic. And I just don't like having my videos look super saturated. And up here you can see I messed a little bit with the basic correction. I took the saturation down even more. But yeah, I'm just gonna turn this off and I'm going to add another Lumetri color and see if I can grade it to where it was with the preset on. Let's just get into editing this, and I think the first thing that we need to do is just go down to our curves, and we can just put little keyframes right here. I do it in the sat versus sat and sat versus luma, and we just take the saturation down and the shadows. The very left is the shadows, And right there, you can see that it's looking a lot more like the original edit. And we'll take this down to 70. With less saturation, the contrast kind of goes down a little bit too. So I like to add a little bit more contrast into my shot, warm it up just a little bit. Hey, real quick, if you like these kind of videos, it'd be really cool if you hit the like button. It really helps me out. Thanks. So let's toggle between the two grades that I just did, and you'll notice how little I did to it because a lot of the contrast and saturation is already baked into the footage, so I didn't have to try to correct that if I was shooting in log. So this is the preset that I have, and this is the one that I just graded. And honestly, I still like my preset a little bit better. The one that I graded still has a little too much saturation for me, but that's really all I do with my footage is I just drag and drop a preset. It's not really even that intense of a grade. It's just taking the saturation and the shadows down and then messing a little bit with the basic correction. So yeah, that's how I grade my talking head shots. As you can see, it's pretty simple. If you shoot with a Panasonic camera like the GH3, G7, G85 or whatever, you can shoot in natural and get a pretty similar shot. And I've actually provided a free LUT on my Selfie account that is the preset that I use for this talking head shot that I use for my YouTube video. So if you want to check that out, you can go to my Selfie account and get it for free. But now let's go into talking a little bit about shooting log and flat versus shooting how I do. Honestly, when I had cameras that you could shoot log or shoot flat, like my Blackmagic Pocket or my my 80D or something like that, I had the option of shooting in really flat picture profiles or flatter picture profiles like CineStyle or something like that. But honestly, at the end of the day, I feel like when it comes to making YouTube videos, and this does not apply when you're like trying to be as cinematic as you possibly can, or you're doing like paid work or something like that, it doesn't apply to that. I'm just talking about when you're making YouTube videos. I feel like shooting in log can kind of slow you down, and a lot of times, especially with like Canon cameras, it can introduce noise and stuff like that. And I honestly feel like it's a lot easier to shoot in one of the natural profiles of your camera because you can get your image looking almost how you want it to look, and all you have to do is some slight tweaks. So when it comes to making YouTube videos, you want as little resistance as you possibly can. So when you have something that you shot in log, sometimes it's hard to tell the exposure. Sometimes you have to like mess around with it so much to where it just gets so frustrating and you just want to quit the video that you started. I honestly think that shooting in a natural profile with the contrast and saturation kind of already baked in makes it a lot easier, at least for me, when it comes to shooting videos. Like, the purpose of shooting log or shooting flat is so that you gain dynamic range and maybe gain a little bit of leeway to mess around with the highlights of the shadows. But in this controlled environment that I have, it's a lot easier for me to make sure that everything is right from the get-go, and I don't have to worry about trying to recover highlights or boost up shadows. I can just get my video right in camera, and then all I have to do is some slight tweaks and it's done and it looks great. So that was just a small little rant. I know that a lot of people do shoot in log when they're shooting these types of videos, and that's totally fine. So yeah, I hope that helped. I know a lot of people have been asking for this video, but yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll have some playlists and videos right here if you want to check those out. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Bye.